Well, that's certainly a start to the preseason. Holy crap, I knew this team was going to be great in transition and giving highlight reels, but in the preseason, that was incredible. Look, guys, I know, it's just the preseason. You almost have to add that as a qualifier, right? Like when people say, it's just Summer League. But what was important, despite the game not meaning anything in terms of regular season standings, is that these guys are already meshing well together. We're not going to pay too much attention to the stats, right? Like in terms of percentages, numbers as a whole, but rather how well are these guys meshing together for an entirely new team? And that is exactly what we saw today. A little rusty at times, which is to be expected, but overall for a first preseason game, a completely new roster, the chemistry is already starting to develop, and I'll highlight some of the things that I thought as Bulls fans we should be excited about based on what we saw tonight. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bull Central here. I hope you're all doing well. I am doing very well. I don't know about you guys, but right off the bat, when that intro started, showing the guys on the screen, before the Bulls starting lineup theme song began, which that song always gives me goosebumps, by the way, because it always brings me back to my childhood days during the Jordan era. And then just to hear DeMar and Lonzo's name be announced first off was a bit of a surreal moment to finally see the guys on this team in a game setting. And of course, you had Lonzo hit that three for the Bulls right off the bat, and everything just flowed from there. The ball movement, the pace, the speed at which they played, the confidence, the athleticism, everything was just clicking. Now granted, kind of a big caveat, it was against the Cavs, and that's aside from it also being a preseason qualifier, which, by the way, not the best welcome home for Lauri Markkanen and Denzel Valentine. Markkanen can't feel too great about wanting a change of scenery to go to one of the worst teams in the league and then to not even start in his first preseason game. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that he won't be starting once the regular season begins, but you'd have to think that if they were planning on starting him, it would have happened in the preseason. But the Cavs shelled out a big contract to Lauri. To have him come off the bench just seems very odd to me. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the Cavs. We're here to talk about the Bulls. Let's start with the fact that the Bulls blew this game out like it was Team USA versus Trinidad and Tobago. Like, what, over 100 points before the third quarter even wrapped up? I mean, we all knew that this team was going to be a high-scoring, talented team on offense, but really putting up some scoring like that, especially at the pace in which they moved on the court, was a thing of beauty. But more important than that, how about that defense? Were all those quote-unquote analysts saying the Bulls would be terrible on defense, and because of this supposed god-awful defense that they would have a hard time squeaking into the playoffs? I know I'm getting ahead of myself, like I can acknowledge that it was just one preseason game, but I said before, this team is actually going to be surprisingly good on defense, and they didn't even have some of their stronger defensive players tonight in Patrick Williams, Derrick Jones Jr., and Tony Bradley, but 13 steals and 11 blocks tonight. The Bulls forced 20 turnovers against the Cavs, substantially better than what we saw last season. Not only that, but how about the assist to turnover ratio? One of the things the Bulls struggled with so much last season, averaging 15 turnovers per game, then only 9 tonight on 36 assists. And how about our GOAT Caruso with 10 assists alone, leading the team in assists, to go along with 10 points and 0 turnovers for Alex Caruso. Zach Lavine, of course, did Zach Lavine things. Despite it being the preseason and only playing 24 minutes, he still was able to score 25 points, shooting 9 for 14 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and of course, those incredible lob catches from Lonzo and Caruso. Get this, Lavine was plus 45 tonight in terms of box plus minus. Well, really because the Cavs played so lousy, all of the starters had insane plus minuses tonight. Vucevic went 10 for 9, or 10 and 9, I should say, to go along with 4 assists. Lonzo only had 8 points, but that's not really what he's there for. He also crashed the boards, was dishing out passes, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and then of course, the defensive end we all have been looking for, the perimeter defense that was so desperately needed. 3 steals, 2 blocks, limiting those turnovers, only 1 turnover for him in 26 minutes of play. Honestly, you could really tell his immediate impact on both ends of the floor, especially on offense, being that floor general and leading this team, facilitating the ball quickly without letting the Cavs defense get set. That is not something the Bulls had at all last year. And of course, DeRozan, maybe a little quieter in terms of the other starters, but still 13 points, shooting 5 for 14, 4 rebounds and 4 assists. But I'll tell you what, one guy that I was very impressed with in terms of his performance tonight was Javonte Green, coming in, starting at the power forward spot, which was a surprise. I really expected Troy Brown Jr. to start with DeMar playing the 4, but boy, did he step in nicely, especially on the defensive end with 2 steals and 4 blocks alone. He was all over the court, clawing his way in, getting the ball from his man, crashing the boards, putting it back up. He had 13 points, shooting 6 for 9 in just 27 minutes of play. For a guy who I had kind of thought likely wouldn't even be in the rotation in the regular season, which still might end up being the case when the team is fully healthy, but he's making a case for himself to be a key piece in the Bulls rotation. Other guys that stood out to me from what I like seeing, aside from the guys I already mentioned, Troy Brown Jr.'s solid outing. You could tell he's improved his 3-point shot, putting up more attempts and hitting threes, and also just playing solid defense as he always does. Alice Johnson doing his thing and crashing the boards, which is what he was praised for last season with the Nets, leading the team in 11 rebounds tonight to go along with 8 points. And then Ayo, he didn't get a chance to come into the game until the third quarter, but when he did, he finally came in. He actually looked very solid, only playing 13 minutes, but he goes 4 for 9 shooting, scoring 8 points, 2 steals and a block, and was hustling for loose balls despite the game being all but over by that time, the time that he came in. And of course, again, it's just a preseason game, so you have to love seeing that from your second round pick rookie, that he can give you solid minutes off the bench, especially with Coby White being out to start the season. And then finally, how about Matt Thomas? I'm still not sure if this guy is actually going to make the roster, because I think that those 2 final roster spots are going to go to Stanley and Alice Johnson. Maybe they could get Thomas on a 2-way contract, but he showed what he does best in being that catch and shoot shooter from outside, putting up 11 points in just 16 minutes. He's not the most athletic guy and obviously isn't a great defender, as evidenced by his 4 fouls that he committed trying to stay with his man in just the limited time that he was in. But for a guy who I really didn't think much about, having him to be that sharpshooter off the bench was definitely nice to see. Now, I was going to give this whole speech or monologue, if you will, about this game setting the tone for the season to come and how we as Bulls fans deserve this. But look, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm going to save that until we start seeing results in the regular season. I want to see the guys come out with hustle and energy on both ends of the floor consistently throughout the year, not just in an isolated game in the preseason against one of the worst teams in the league. But what I will say is it was great to finally see a fun and exciting Bulls team in action again, working hard and working well together. Everybody was getting involved, and it was a great sight to see these guys smiling and happy the whole way through, especially a guy like Zach Lavine, who has been so desperately wanting to be a part of a winning team. I cannot wait for the season to start, the regular season that is, and I am looking forward to following along with all of you guys the whole way. I'll have my hot takes video out tomorrow that I do every Wednesday, so be on the lookout for that. As always, guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan. I will be covering the team all season long. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.